All right, so just to kind of wrap up the show, I wanted to share with you something I haven't talked about before. It's a little bit off the beaten path of what we normally cover on this show, but it's a Friday night. We're headed into the holiday season. So I wanted to talk to you about a project in which I'm involved that I'm very proud of, and we actually just went and visited this weekend, so it's on my mind, and we did some new videos on it. We did some updates about it to the people who on GoFundMe have been supporting it. For those of you who don't know, in 2017, along with my husband, Dave Miranda, we founded an animal shelter that we built on a small farm in a town right outside Rio de Janeiro that is an animal shelter, a dog shelter primarily. We have cats too, but mostly dogs. And we find dogs on the street. People find dogs on the street, abandoned animals, dogs that are suffering. As some of you know, I have 25 dogs in our home, all of whom have been picked up on the street. And one of the reasons we started the shelter was because otherwise my husband was going to leave me if we kept picking up dogs, even though he picked up half of them. He was kind of a hypocrite about it. But also because we met this woman who was a homeless woman, and she kind of built this makeshift family, and they lived in the middle of the forest in an abandoned house. And I used to drive by there all the time. I lived near there. And I used to see these obviously homeless people with huge numbers of dogs. So one day I stopped and I wanted to find out what was going on, and I went and talked to them, and they invited me in and they showed me this like unbelievable thing they had built where they were taking care of at least 45 dogs. And a lot of times what would happen is like wealthy families or middle-class families would take dogs. A lot of times their parents would have dogs and they would die and they didn't want to take care of these dogs. They were adult dogs. They didn't know what to do with them. They would come and just drop them in the middle of the forest thinking nobody would see them doing it. It's like actually the worst possible thing you can do to a dog, especially a dog that had previously been domesticated, because dogs don't know how to survive who have been domesticated in the middle of a forest. They're going to starve to death, which is the most painful way a human or an animal can die. And these people were homeless. They couldn't feed themselves sometimes. They had very dirty clothing, very old clothing, and yet these dogs were better cared for than my own. And the reason was because, and there's a lot of research on this, I started talking to a lot of people. Most people who have dogs love their dog. I love my dogs. Most people I know who have dogs love their dogs. But most people who aren't homeless have other things in their life besides their dogs. They have their spouse, they have their kids, they have their job, they have their parents, whatever. They have a lot of other things besides their dog. Homeless people don't have anything besides their dog. And the dog that they live on the street with, doesn't have anything besides that person. My dog has a bunch of people at home, not just me. They attach to other people. Homeless dogs have only their person. Homeless people only have their dog. And so the bond becomes so much greater. I used to find people who are homeless on the street with their dogs, and I used to say to them, like, oh, I'll buy you food. And anytime I did, they would immediately cut it in half and give half to their dog. Or I'd say, oh, let me buy you a leash and collar so you don't lose your dog. And they would say, I don't need a leash and collar. My dog never, ever leaves my side. Even though they were on the street. And I watched, they would get up and the dog would go with them everywhere they went. They were completely bonded. And so we decided, you know what, this relationship between homeless people and their dogs is like an incredible power. We can build a shelter that is based on it, that captures it, that's built around it. And when I was at The Intercept, one of my colleagues was Laura Poitras, who is the Oscar-winning director of Citizen4. She worked with me on The Snowden Story. That was the film about our work on The Snowden Story. She's been nominated two other times for documentaries, including one in 2023, The Beauty and the Bloodshed, which is an amazing film about this woman, Nan Golden, who's an artist who worked to hold accountable the Sackler family for opioid addiction. It was nominated for an Oscar in 2022. It should have won. This film about Navalny won because Hollywood celebrities wanted to honor Putin's enemies. Anyway, she produced a short film about this woman, Caroline, and her relationship with dogs at this shelter that inspired our shelter. I just want to show you a little bit of it.
Com você, bolinha, agora. Né, filho? Aqui eu cheguei primeiro. Eu entrei por trás.
Here I arrived first, I entered. I'm going to read it for the people who listen by podcast, but also if you can't see the subtitles on the screen, just a couple more minutes of Caroline explaining. Here I arrived first. I entered from behind, I said I'll enter from behind because I won't jump the wall. That was in 2009. I used to live under the bridge when they told me about this empty place to break into. I was supposed to come alone. I felt pity at that time. Luana, the dog, was under the bridge with me. Then I said I'm not going to go alone and leave. My sister here, I'll take her with me. And then she describes basically how she ended up with many dogs. So when we built the shelter, the first thing we did was we hired her to run it. And she ran the shelter, I mean, with incredible competence. She was really the boss of the shelter, and she had other people who had been homeless and living on the street working there with her. These dogs were incredibly well cared for. She learned very quickly how to manage a shelter, how to take care of these dogs, many in number, to receive new dogs, to make sure they got their medication and their surgeries. And she got cancer and died in 2021. She was very sad, but she was very well taken care of. She had health insurance. She really reformed her life. We had social workers there working with all the homeless people. And here was an interview I did when we first unveiled the shelter. This was now 6 years ago in 2017 that I did on Democracy Now! I also did a segment on Tucker Carlson's show about this shelter as well. But this one was one I did on Democracy Now!
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
Glenn Greenwald, I want to turn to a new project you're involved with in Brazil. It's a new type of animal shelter you created with Rio de Janeiro City Councilman David Miranda, staffed by homeless people who live on the streets with abandoned pets. This is a clip from your short film about the project.
We started realizing that if we could tap into this power, this incomparable love that forms this mutual needing between homeless people and abandoned animals, we could build something really powerful and really beautiful, and that's how we got the idea for this shelter.
We need to organize in order to do this. We can't leave it in the hands of the state or the city to care for animals. We must always remember that caring for animals is a critical factor in public health. If you care for animals, there is better treatment for society generally. At the same time, with the huge crisis that we're suffering here in Brazil, many people are losing their jobs and ending up in the street. And the government doesn't have the will or resources for people who end up in this situation, living on the street.
Now we've hired our first employee who is going to be the manager of the entire project, who is one half of the couple, the same-sex couple, who we profiled about 6 months ago, who adopted 3 boys at once.
The intention is that animals don't sit abandoned and lost on the street. We will rescue many animals and place them in homes. And at the same time are giving homeless people the tools and opportunity to change their own lives.
And now we've hired our first person who's homeless as well. His name is Lucas. He's 20 years old.
I live here. I sleep on the street here. People who live on the street are very humiliated because of that. A lot of people are on the street because they need to, because they hadn't any support. This will really change my life. Not to live more on the street, to have and care for my dog, with a home, a bed, food that I can eat, to be able to take a shower. You can go places and be treated like a person.
So that's the film about a new project being spearheaded by the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Glenn Greenwald and his husband, David Miranda, who is also a Rio de Janeiro city councilman. Glenn, can you...
So we talked about the project, and actually that segment produced a lot of people who donated to the project. We had a lot of donors who helped get us the project off the ground and have renewed those donations ever since. And so I just visited the shelter this weekend. I haven't been able to go for a while, and we're planning a lot of enlargement, including expanding our capacity of how many dogs we have, how many homeless people we employ. So I just want to show you a little of the video. We usually have a professional photographer. He was traveling, so my kids took this video. It's not as professional. Don't tell them I said that. But it gives you kind of a sense for what the shelter is now like. The idea was always to have only open spaces for these dogs. Like occasionally they have to, dogs that are aggressive with newly arrived dogs get put on this kind of running chain just so dogs can be safe. But in general, that's the idea, is they're all out in the open. They're all out, they're not imprisoned or ever kept in small areas or kennels. They have this open area with shelter for rain or for heat. And so this is what our shelter is.
Você tá gravando?
So it was great. There's whenever I go there, there's dogs that I've known for a long time, like older dogs that we haven't been able to find a home for, and so I know these dogs. I've known them for years. They're probably going to be there their whole life. Sometimes we do get dogs that are older placed, but obviously most people want younger dogs. But then there's always new dogs too that were arrived in the last several months who I only got to know for the first time. So it's always a great place to visit. Seeing the people come in and out as well is really gratifying. And if you want to know more about the project, there's a link in my profile on Twitter. You can go to our GoFundMe page where there's a lot of, what's that? Yeah, we'll put in the notes of the video the links that you can go to if you want to support the project, if you want to read about the project. But we're really excited about the ability for us to expand. I just wanted to share that with you. I've written about it before. I don't think I've talked about it on the show since I just visited there this week, and I was excited to share it. It's something that gives me a lot of fulfillment and gratification. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.